It was a dazzling October afternoon in Manhattan. The skyscrapers sparkled like glass flames, reflecting the blazing red of the setting sun. Inside the 42nd floor studio of Ashford Media Tower, the atmosphere was boiling over like a pressure cooker. Cameras whirred, bright white lights beamed onto the stage, and the audience's applause crashed like waves. Evelyn Moore stood backstage, her hands clutching the blue silk suit she had picked for Julian that very morning. Her heart was pounding, not from nerves, but from a sinking feeling she couldn't shake. Today was a live taping of The Spotlight, the highest-rated talk show at Ashford Media. Julian Ashford, heir to the billion-dollar media empire, was the featured guest. He sat there on a leather chair, wearing that perfect smile Evelyn once thought was reserved only for her. The gray suit he wore had been chosen by her, every stitch inspected with care. "You look like you just walked out of a magazine," she had said, and he'd replied with a quick kiss on her forehead before stepping onto the stage. But now, watching him on the backstage monitor, Evelyn felt a chasm open between them. They had been secretly dating for nearly a year, hiding from curious tabloids and the scrutiny of his mother, Victoria Ashford. Julian always said he needed time to handle his family, and Evelyn believed him. She believed in the moments they held hands in his penthouse, the city lights of Manhattan glittering through the windows, and his whispered promise that she was the only one who made him feel real. "Evelyn, are you okay?" Lisa, the floor assistant, jolted her back to reality. Lisa frowned, clipboard in hand. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just a little nervous," Evelyn said, forcing a smile. She smoothed her curly brown hair and tried to focus on work. As Julian's lead stylist, it was her job to ensure everything was perfect. But today, she wasn't just his stylist, she was the woman who loved him. And that made everything infinitely harder. On stage, host Dana Harper, with her golden hair and razor-sharp smile, was guiding the audience through the opening questions. "Julian, you were just named one of Forbes' most powerful CEOs under 30. What's it like to run an entire media empire at 28? Julian smiled, a dimple appearing in his left cheek. "I just try not to disappoint my mother," he said, his voice low and magnetic. The audience laughed. Evelyn smiled too. He always knew how to win people over. But then Dana leaned in, eyes gleaming like a cat playing with its prey. "Now, Julian, let's talk a little personal. There's a rumor going around that you're dating someone from your styling team, a regular girl, not from high society. Is that true?" The air in the studio turned to ice. Evelyn felt the blood drain from her face. Her hands trembled, the silk suit slipping from her grasp and falling to the floor. How did Dana know? Julian had promised to keep things private. He said they needed time before going public, to protect her from gossip and judgment. But now Dana's question was a bomb, and all eyes were on Julian, waiting. Julian remained seated, composed, but Evelyn saw his fingers grip the armrest tightly. She knew he hated being cornered. She silently begged him to say something, anything to protect her, to protect them. "Rumors, huh?" Julian raised an eyebrow, his smile turning cold. "I don't make a habit of dating people behind the scenes, especially the type looking to climb the ladder. My job's complicated enough as it is, Dana." The audience erupted with laughter, as if he had just delivered a brilliant punchline. Dana clapped and moved on as smoothly as a breeze. But for Evelyn, the world collapsed. Every word had been a blade to her heart. Climb the ladder, that's what he called her now. The woman he held every night, who spent hours picking ties to make him shine, was just another social climber in his eyes. She stepped back, her spine hitting the cold wall behind the curtain. Her mind spun. He didn't mean it. He's just under pressure. But reason couldn't quiet her breaking heart. She looked up at the screen and saw him still smiling, still answering questions like nothing had happened, like she didn't exist. "Evelyn, do you want to step out for some air?" Lisa's hand landed gently on her shoulder, concern in her voice. But Evelyn shook her head. She couldn't leave. She couldn't let anyone see her fall apart. She was Evelyn Moore, the woman who always held it together, always got the job done, even if her heart was in pieces. The taping ended with roaring applause. Julian stepped off the stage, waving at the crowd, his eyes never once searching for her. Evelyn stood frozen, waiting for him to come back, to explain. But then she saw Victoria Ashford emerge from the VIP hallway. With her platinum hair and Chanel dress, she walked up to Julian, placing a hand on his shoulder. She whispered something in his ear, and he nodded, his expression stony. Evelyn turned away before they could spot her. She picked up the silk suit from the floor, clutching it like it was the only thing keeping her upright. He chose them. He chose status and family over her. Her soul screamed, but not a single tear fell. Not here. Not in front of the people who only saw her as the help. She stepped out of the studio, the cold Manhattan air slapping her face. Neon lights blinked mockingly along the avenue as she stood among strangers. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Julian. "Meet me at the penthouse tonight. I'll explain." She stared at the screen, her finger hovering over the delete button. But she didn't delete it. Not yet. Some part of her still hoped, still believed he hadn't meant to hurt her. But deep down she knew. After tonight, nothing would ever be the same. Welcome to Soul Stories, your home for heart-touching tales of love, hope, and second chances. If you believe in the power of kindness and the magic of unexpected connections, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our growing family. Rain poured over the streets of Manhattan, turning sidewalks into rivers that shimmered with neon lights. Evelyn stood under the awning of a small cafe, a black umbrella shielding her pale face. It had been 3 weeks since that fateful talk show, and with each passing day, she felt herself slowly unraveling. Julian's penthouse, once a place she thought of as safe, was now just a distant luxury. That night he apologized. He said he had no choice, that Dana had cornered him live on air. "You know I never meant to hurt you," he had said, his amber eyes pleading with hers. But that apology wasn't enough to mend her heart. Evelyn tried. She returned to work, still picking out Julian's suits and ties, still smiling at her colleagues at Ashford Media. But every time she looked at him, all she could hear was that word, social climber. It echoed in her mind like a broken song on repeat. Then this morning, a pregnancy test with 2 pink lines changed everything. She had sat on the bathroom floor of her tiny rental apartment in the Lower East Side, her hands trembling as she held the test. Pregnant. The word repeated itself in her mind, both magical and terrifying. She placed a hand on her belly, imagining a tiny life forming inside. Not just one life. The doctor later confirmed it. Twins, 2 babies, 2 new lives, hers and Julian's. "He needs to know," Evelyn whispered to her reflection in the mirror, her eyes red and swollen. Her heart still ached, but she couldn't keep this from him. The children deserved a father. And maybe, just maybe, this would change Julian. She gathered her courage and sent him a message. "Julian, I need to see you. It's important." But the message only showed as sent. No reply. The next day she went to Ashford Media Tower, determined to speak to him face to face. But as she stepped into the lobby, a man in a black suit and sunglasses stopped her. "Ms. Moore, I'm Robert Klein, legal counsel for the Ashford family," he said, his voice cold as steel. "You should know that any attempt to spread rumors or cause disruption will have serious legal consequences." Evelyn froze. "I'm not trying to cause trouble. I just need to speak to Julian." Klein curled his lips slightly and handed her a business card. "If you have anything to say, contact me. But let me give you some advice. Don't try to extort money or status from the Ashfords. We don't tolerate that." She walked out of the building, her legs heavy as lead. On the way home, she tried calling Julian again, but her number had been blocked. She emailed him, only to receive an automated reply. "This address is no longer accepting messages." Every door to him had been slammed shut. That night, she lay on her bed, staring at the stained ceiling of her cramped apartment. "They think I'm a gold digger. They think she would use her pregnancy to trap Julian." The thought sliced through her. She remembered the look in Victoria Ashford's eyes that day in the VIP hallway. Cold, calculating, powerful. Evelyn knew that if she stayed, if she fought back, her children would grow up in a world of lies and pressure, pawns in the Ashfords' game. "No," she said aloud, sitting upright. "I won't let my babies live like that." She placed her hands on her belly, a new resolve forming within her. She would protect them, even if it meant leaving everything behind. 2 months later, Evelyn stood at Penn Station, an old suitcase beside her. She had sold almost all of her belongings, ended her lease, and resigned from Ashford Media with a brief email. Her small savings were just enough to start over in a new place. Brook Hollow, a tiny town in Vermont she had once read about in an article titled, "The Most Peaceful Places in America." She had no family to lean on, no close friends left in Manhattan to help, but she had herself, and now she had two lives growing inside her. The train arrived, its whistle piercing the frigid air. Evelyn stepped on board without looking back. The skyscrapers and dazzling lights of Manhattan faded into the distance. She sat by the window, watching the rain trace patterns on the glass, one hand on her belly as if cradling the whole world. Brook Hollow welcomed her with a gentle winter morning. The small town nestled among snow-covered hills, its white-painted wooden houses puffing soft smoke from brick chimneys. Evelyn rented a modest apartment above a bakery where the air was laced with the scent of flour and cinnamon every morning. She started over, one quiet step at a time. She bought an old sewing machine, began mending clothes for the townspeople, and enrolled in Vermont's state health insurance program. By spring, her belly had rounded noticeably. She gave birth to two boys, Liam and Lucas, at the county's small hospital. Liam arrived first, crying loudly as if to announce himself to the world. Lucas followed, smaller and quieter, gripping her finger as if to say everything would be all right. Looking into their amber eyes, just like Julian's, Evelyn felt both joy and sorrow. She named them after dreams, Liam meaning protector, and Lucas meaning light. "Mommy's going to give you a good life," she whispered, holding them close. "Just the three of us." She never mentioned Julian to anyone in Brook Hollow. When the bakery owner asked about the children's father, Evelyn simply smiled and said, "He's not in the picture." And slowly she learned to lock away the past, like sealing a dusty old trunk in the far corner of her soul. Manhattan, Ashford Media, and the man who once promised to love her forever were now just a distant dream. Morning sunlight streamed through the window, casting warm rays across the worn wooden floor of Evelyn's small sewing shop in Brook Hollow. She sat at her sewing machine, fingers deftly threading the needle through cotton fabric, altering an evening gown for Mrs. Henderson, the town's florist. The scent of coffee drifted up from the bakery downstairs, mingling with the chirping of sparrows outside the porch. It had been 5 years since Evelyn left Manhattan, carrying two tiny lives inside her. Now, Brook Hollow was home, a place where past pain had faded like a passing breeze. On the corner of her desk, two crayon drawings were taped with care, one titled Mom and Liam and Lucas, with 3 stick figures holding hands beneath a bright sun, and the other, Super Liam, showed a caped boy flying through a starry sky. Evelyn smiled, her heart warm. Liam and Lucas, her 4-year-old twin boys, were the light that guided her through the darkest days. "Lucas, be careful with that colored pencil," Evelyn called without looking up. Lucas, with curly brown hair and bright amber eyes, sat in the corner, coloring a paper kite. He was the quieter of the two, dreamy and artistic. "I will, Mommy," Lucas replied softly, setting the pencil down with care. Meanwhile, Liam, energetic like a tiny whirlwind, was running around with a plastic ball. "Mommy, will you play soccer with me this afternoon?" he shouted, knocking over a spool of thread in the process. Evelyn paused her stitching and raised an eyebrow. "Liam, if you knock over one more spool, I'll turn you into Super Mop Boy." Liam burst out laughing, his left cheek dimple showing, a feature Evelyn tried not to think too much about. She stood, picked up the thread, and pulled Liam into her arms, tickling him until they were both giggling uncontrollably. Lucas glanced over with a shy smile, then returned to his kite. These simple, love-filled moments were why she fought every single day. Evelyn wasn't just a single mom, she was part of the Brook Hollow community. 5 years ago, she had opened her little sewing shop, using her former skills as a stylist to tailor and design clothes. She also taught a free crafts class every Saturday for the town's children, guiding them in making kites, bracelets, and rag puppets. The townspeople adored her. Mrs. Henderson often brought her cookies, saying she sewed dresses better than the boutiques in Burlington. Mr. Tom, the bookstore owner, liked to joke, "Evelyn, If you start a sewing class for adults, I'm your first student." Their encouragement made her blush, but also made her proud. She had built a life from nothing, relying on no one but herself. But being a single mother was never easy. There were nights she lay awake, worrying about rent or medical bills. Days when both boys were sick and she ran herself ragged between the clinic and the shop. But she never let her sons see her falter. "Mommy's your superhero," she often told them. And they believed it, their eyes shining as they hugged her tight. Today was Saturday, and her crafts class was busier than usual. 8 kids sat around the long table in the community center, laughing and sticking glue everywhere. Liam stood on his chair, holding up his dragon-shaped kite. "Mom, mine's gonna fly the highest, right?" Lucas, sitting beside him, shook his head. "Mine's prettier, Liam. Your dragon looks weird." Evelyn laughed, placing a hand on both of their shoulders. "Both kites are amazing. What matters is how hard you tried." She moved around the table, helping a little girl tie her kite string, and was about to return when Liam asked a question, his voice curious. "Mommy, does our dad know how to draw kites?" The room didn't fall silent, but Evelyn's heart did. This wasn't the first time. Liam and Lucas, with the natural curiosity of 4-year-olds, often asked about their father, and each time it pierced her. She knelt, facing Liam's amber eyes that mirrored Julian's far too closely. "I don't know, sweetheart," she said gently. "Your daddy, he hurt Mommy a lot, but I have you too, and that's the best thing that's ever happened to me." Liam nodded, but his eyes held questions that hadn't been answered. Lucas, ever quiet, reached for her hand, as if to comfort her. Evelyn smiled, tousled their hair, and changed the subject. "Now, who wants to try flying kites in the park this afternoon?" That afternoon, Brook Hollow Park glowed in autumn colors. Red and gold leaves drifted down, blanketing the grass like a soft rug. Evelyn stood among the children, helping each one launch their kite. Liam darted ahead, squealing as his dragon kite soared, though a bit tilted from pulling too hard. Lucas walked calmly behind, holding his kite string tight, his eyes following the sparrow-shaped kite he had colored earlier. "Mommy, look!" Lucas called, laughing loudly for the first time all day. Mrs. Henderson, strolling nearby, waved cheerfully. "Evelyn, the kids look so happy. You're a treasure to this town." Evelyn blushed, murmured thanks, then turned to help another girl with her tangled string. In that moment, she felt peace. She had done it. She had given Liam and Lucas a full life, even without a father's presence. She taught them independence, how to hold a spoon, fold laundry, and kindness, like saying sorry when they were wrong or sharing cookies with friends. She also taught them to avoid the world she once knew, the world of the powerful where words could cut sharper than knives. But deep down, Evelyn knew she couldn't hide the past forever. One day, Liam and Lucas would want answers. They would ask why she left Manhattan, why she never spoke of their father. And when that day came, she would have to face the memory of Julian Ashford, the man who had once meant everything and then taken everything away. As the sun began to set, Evelyn walked home with her boys, each one holding a hand. Liam sang a silly superhero song, while Lucas told her about a bird he'd seen in the park. She listened, smiling, but in her heart she whispered a quiet promise. "No matter what comes, I will protect my children." Autumn in Brook Hollow burst into life with vibrant colors. The town's central park, usually quiet with a few morning joggers, buzzed with laughter and the scent of warm apple pie. Brook Hollow Preschool was hosting its annual fundraiser, complete with game booths, handmade crafts, and a small stage where the children performed. Evelyn Moore stood at her stall, arranging hand-sewn fabric bracelets and tote bags, her hands busy while her eyes kept track of Liam and Lucas. "Mommy, can I have one more cookie?" Liam asked, crumbs still clinging to his lips, his amber eyes sparkling. Clad in a red jacket, he darted around the booth like a little bee. Lucas, seated beside Evelyn, neatly arranged the bags and shook his head at his brother. "Liam, you already had 3. Mommy said only 2. Evelyn laughed, patting Lucas's head. "Thank you for remembering, sweetheart. Liam, if you want another cookie, you've got to help me sell 1 bracelet first. Deal?" Liam nodded eagerly and immediately shouted at a passing elderly woman, "Ma'am, buy my mommy's bracelet. It's really pretty. The woman chuckled and bought two, making Evelyn blush with her son's enthusiastic sales pitch. The event bustled with cheerful folk music, chattering parents, and colorful booths. Mrs. Henderson, the florist, brought over a basket of chrysanthemums to decorate Evelyn's stall. "You've made this spot look like a county fair, Evelyn," she praised warmly. Evelyn smiled and thanked her. She loved Brook Hollow for moments like these, where everyone treated each other like family. Amid the crowd, a small crew from Small Town Heroes, a reality show spotlighting tight-knit communities, arrived with cameras and microphones. They had been invited to film the event for a promotional segment about Brook Hollow. Evelyn hesitated when the camera pointed her way, but eventually agreed to a brief interview. "I'm Evelyn Moore, a single mother to Liam and Lucas," she said softly but confidently. "I run a sewing shop and teach crafts to the kids here. Brook Hollow is home. It's where I found peace." Liam and Lucas, curious about the camera, ran over. Liam held up a bracelet, grinning wide. "My mom made this. You should buy one." Lucas, more reserved, held Evelyn's hand, but smiled when the cameraman complimented his gemstone eyes. Laughter rippled through the crowd, and Evelyn hugged both boys, her heart brimming with pride. What she didn't know was that this moment, captured by a lens, would change everything. 2 weeks later in Manhattan, Julian Ashford sat in the penthouse office of Ashford Media Tower. The city lights sparkled beyond the glass walls, but he barely noticed. On his screen was an email from his assistant titled, "Must See Clip from Vermont." Julian frowned, ready to delete it. He had no time for fluff between financial reports and back-to-back meetings, but the subject line, "Small Town Heroes," piqued his curiosity. He hit play, just to kill a few minutes. The video opened with a sweeping shot of Brook Hollow Park blanketed in autumn leaves, children laughing, and a warm narrator's voice. "Today we visit Brook Hollow, Vermont, a town where community thrives in the simplest things." The camera panned over cheerful booths and stopped on a woman with curly brown hair and a soft smile. "I'm Evelyn Moore, a single mother to Liam and Lucas," she said, her voice like a ghost from a distant past. Julian froze. Evelyn. Her name, her voice. It cut through 5 years of silence like a blade. He leaned forward, eyes locked on the screen. She looked different. Not the timid stylist hiding backstage at Ashford Media, but a strong, confident woman. But what stole his breath were the two boys beside her. Liam, beaming with a bracelet in hand and a deep dimple in his left cheek, shouted something gleefully into the camera. Lucas, quieter, stood close to Evelyn, his amber eyes looking straight into the lens. Julian felt the blood drain from his face. Those eyes, that dimple. It was like looking into a mirror of his childhood. He rewound the video, pausing on the boys' faces. His heart thudded violently. No, it can't be. He shook his head, grasping for a rational explanation. But every detail, from Liam's grin to the way Lucas tilted his head, fit too perfectly. He pulled open a drawer and took out an old photograph. Him and Evelyn, snapped during a rare carefree moment in Central Park, when she used to smile at him like he was her entire world. He looked from the photo to the video screen, and the truth slammed into his chest like a punch. "Evelyn," he whispered hoarsely. She had vanished 5 years ago. No goodbye, no trail. He thought she left out of anger, because of that stupid thing he said on national TV. He'd searched for her, but his mother, Victoria, insisted she was just a gold digger who ran when she didn't get what she wanted. And Julian had believed it, or at least forced himself to, just to survive the ache. But now, staring at those boys, he knew he'd been wrong, so terribly, unforgivably wrong. He shot to his feet, pacing the office in a storm of fury, guilt, and disbelief. She was pregnant. She had my children, and I didn't know. Anger flared, at himself, at the system, at the walls he'd allowed his mother and legal team to build. Why didn't she tell me? Why didn't she fight to reach me? Then he remembered, the family lawyer, the blocked calls, the rejected emails. He'd let them erase her from his life, and now the cost was 2 children he'd never known existed. Julian dropped back into his chair, opened his laptop, and typed, "Evelyn Moore, Brook Hollow." The video popped up on X, with thousands of shares and comments. "What an amazing mom!" Adorable twins. He clicked a post that read, Evelyn Moore, single mom raising well-mannered twin boys in Brook Hollow, Vermont. The word twins made his chest tighten. He had to act. He grabbed his phone and called his assistant. Book me a flight to Brook Hollow, he ordered. Tomorrow. His voice was firm, but inside he trembled. He had to see Evelyn. He had to meet those boys. And he needed answers, no matter what it would cost. Brook Hollow glowed under the soft light of early winter, the wooden rooftops glazed with a delicate layer of frost. Evelyn Moore stood inside her sewing shop, absently gazing out the window. Liam and Lucas were at preschool, and she was using the quiet morning to finish a wool coat for Mr. Tom, the town's bookseller. But her heart wasn't still. Ever since the fundraiser 2 weeks ago, she'd felt a strange tension, like the past was lurking just beyond the walls of the life she had so carefully rebuilt. The chime of the doorbell snapped her back. She looked up, ready to greet a customer with her usual smile, but that smile froze the instant she saw who walked in. Julian Ashford. Dressed in a simple gray suit, he still exuded quiet authority. His amber eyes locked on hers, and for a moment, time stood still. He looked different, his hair shorter, his face more angular. But he was still Julian, the man who once shattered her heart. Evelyn, he said, his voice deep, laced with a mix of pain and restrained anger. We need to talk. Evelyn gripped the coat in her hands, suddenly feeling like the floor had disappeared beneath her. What are you doing here, Julian? Her voice was cold, but inside she trembled. She had imagined this moment for 5 years, but now that it was real, she had no idea what to do. I saw the video, Julian said as he stepped forward, eyes never leaving hers. Small-town heroes, 2 boys, Liam and Lucas. They're mine, aren't they? The question hit her like a punch to the chest. She stepped back, her spine pressing against the sewing table, hands clutching the edge to steady herself. You have no right to ask me that, she snapped. Not after what you did. Julian's brow furrowed, his face darkening. What I did? Evelyn, you disappeared. Without a word, no trace. And now I find out I have 2 children. Through a video. Why didn't you tell me? Evelyn let out a dry, bitter laugh. Tell you? After you called me a gold digger on national television? You think I'd show up pregnant on your doorstep and beg you to acknowledge me? She stepped forward, pointing at him. I tried, Julian. I texted, called, emailed. But you, or more precisely, your legal team, blocked me. They threatened to sue me if I said anything. You really expected me to drag my children into that world? Julian stood frozen, as if slapped. He opened his mouth, but no words came. He remembered the months after Evelyn left, how his mother, Victoria, had insisted she was nothing but trouble. He had let his team handle it, never questioning the details. And now, standing in front of Evelyn, he realized just how horribly he had failed her. Evelyn, he faltered, his voice rough. I didn't know. I swear. I didn't know they'd done that. Not knowing isn't an apology, Evelyn said sharply, turning away so he wouldn't see the tears welling in her eyes. What do you want, Julian? Why are you here? I want to meet them, he said, firmer now. Liam and Lucas. I want to know my sons. Evelyn shook her head, voice trembling. You don't get to waltz in and be part of their lives just because you're suddenly curious. They don't need you. They have me, and they're happy. The tension between them tightened like a string pulled to the breaking point. But before Julian could respond, the doorbell chimed again. Liam and Lucas came bursting in, jackets muddy, faces glowing. Mommy, I drew a dinosaur today, Liam shouted, waving a paper smeared with crayon. Lucas, quieter, clung to Evelyn's leg, eyes turning curiously toward Julian. Julian stood motionless, staring at the boys. Liam, with his dazzling smile and unmistakable dimple. Lucas, with his thoughtful gaze and familiar amber eyes. Julian's chest ached, a mixture of wonder and heartbreak. Who's that, Mommy? Lucas asked softly, still clutching Evelyn's coat. Evelyn inhaled deeply, trying to steady her voice. He's an old friend of mine. He's just visiting. She turned to Julian with a warning in her eyes. Right? Julian understood. He knelt down, face level with the boys, forcing a smile. Hi there, I'm Julian. That's a really cool dinosaur you drew, he said to Liam, then turned to Lucas. What do you like to draw? Lucas tilted his head, thoughtful. Sparrows, they fly high. Liam chimed in. But dinosaurs are stronger, right, Mr. Julian? Julian chuckled, a genuine warm sound he didn't know he still had. Dinosaurs are strong, but sparrows are special too. Both are amazing. The boys laughed, clearly intrigued by the new stranger. Evelyn stood still, heart in turmoil. She wanted to send Julian away, to protect her sons. But watching the way he spoke to them, she couldn't deny the truth. He was their father, whether she wanted him to be or not. All right, boys, go wash your hands, she said, her tone firmer than she intended. Mommy needs to talk to Mr. Julian. The twins nodded and ran into the back room, leaving behind a heavy silence. Evelyn turned to Julian, her voice lowered. Listen to me. I don't want them knowing who you are. Not now. They're too young, and I won't let you turn their lives upside down just because you decided to show up. Julian nodded slowly, though his eyes betrayed resistance. I understand, but I'm not going anywhere, Evelyn. I want to be part of their lives, and yours, if you'll let me. She shook her head and walked to the door, opening it. Leave, Julian. Go back to Manhattan. Back to your world. We don't belong in it. Julian looked at her, pain flashing across his face. But he didn't argue. He stepped out into the cold Brook Hollow air. As the door shut behind him, he stood on the sidewalk, staring through the window of the sewing shop. Inside, Evelyn turned away, hugging her arms around herself as if holding everything together. Julian clenched his fists. He knew he couldn't force his way back in, but he also knew he couldn't walk away. Not now. Not when he had just found the two pieces of himself he never knew were missing. And the woman he had never truly stopped loving. Brook Hollow was cloaked in a soft winter mist, the cobblestone streets glimmering under the streetlights. Julian Ashford stood before a small rental house on the edge of town, a single suitcase in hand. He had left Manhattan 3 days earlier, not with assistance or luxury cars, but with a rented SUV and a resolve that couldn't be shaken. He knew he couldn't force Evelyn's forgiveness, but after seeing Liam and Lucas, 2 little boys who bore his face, he also knew he couldn't go back to the life he once knew. After their tense confrontation in the sewing shop, Evelyn had reluctantly agreed to a compromise. You can stay in Brook Hollow, she had said, her voice like steel, but only as a family acquaintance. You will not tell Liam and Lucas that you're their father. If you do anything to hurt them, I swear, Julian, you'll regret it. He had nodded, accepting her terms, even as his heart ached with the urge to hold his sons and call them his. Today would be his first official visit with Liam and Lucas. Evelyn had invited him to the park, where she usually took the boys to play soccer on Saturday afternoons. Julian stood at the edge of the field, dressed in a simple wool coat instead of his usual suits, feeling oddly out of place among the small-town families. He spotted Evelyn first, kneeling to tie Lucas's shoelaces, her curly brown hair pulled into a high ponytail. Liam zipped across the grass, kicking a plastic soccer ball and yelling, "Mommy, come play with me!" When Evelyn looked up and saw Julian, she gave a curt nod, a reluctant invitation. "Liam, Lucas," she called out, "Mr. Julian is joining us today." Liam ran over, eyes wide with curiosity. "You're the guy who likes dinosaurs, right?" he asked, referencing their brief exchange in the sewing shop. Julian smiled and crouched to the boy's level. "That's me, but I heard you're way better at soccer than I am." "I'm super good," Liam declared, grabbing Julian's hand and dragging him onto the field. Lucas, more reserved, held on to Evelyn's hand, his amber eyes watching Julian with interest. "You want to try too, Lucas?" Julian asked gently. Lucas shook his head at first, but with a small, encouraging nod from Evelyn, he eventually took a few slow steps toward them. Julian had never played soccer with kids. In Manhattan, his life revolved around meetings and glamorous events. But here, under the pale sunlight of Brook Hollow, he found himself laughing as Liam tried to dribble the ball past him, and Lucas, though clumsy, joined in with a shy smile. "Mr. Julian, you're too slow," Liam teased, prompting Julian to dramatically fall onto the grass. The boys burst into laughter, their joy infectious. Evelyn stood a few yards away, arms folded across her chest, watching silently. She wanted to keep her distance, to hold on to her anger. But watching Julian roll in the grass with her sons, she couldn't deny he was trying. That didn't erase the past, though. Her mind flashed to that moment, the words social climber broadcasted to millions. She turned away, pretending to check her purse, hiding the swirl of emotions inside her. That evening, Julian was invited to Evelyn's apartment, a cozy space above the bakery. The wooden dining table was laid with freshly baked bread and her homemade potato soup. Liam and Lucas sat across from Julian, chattering about preschool with the boundless energy only 4-year-olds could muster. "My teacher said I drew the best dinosaur in class," Liam announced proudly. Lucas, curled up in his chair, added shyly, "I drew a sparrow. She liked it too." Julian listened attentively, nodding and asking gentle questions. "What kind of dinosaur did you draw? Do sparrows fly fast?" To his own surprise, he found himself genuinely fascinated by their answers. When Lucas handed him a crayon drawing, Julian felt his heart melt. "This is my son," he thought, but said nothing, honoring Evelyn's boundary. After dinner, Evelyn allowed him to read the boys their bedtime story. He settled into the armchair while Liam and Lucas curled up on the sofa, eyes glowing with excitement as he read The Little Dinosaur That Could. His voice was calm and warm, carefully pacing each word. When Liam yawned and leaned against his arm, Julian had to resist the urge to wrap him in a tight hug. From the kitchen, Evelyn washed the dishes, her ears catching every word. She didn't want to admit it, but Julian was better at this than she'd expected. There was no arrogance, no pretense. Just a man, trying to connect with two boys he barely knew. And that terrified her. In the days that followed, Julian quietly became part of Brook Hollow. He signed a longer lease on the little house, bought a used bicycle, and started showing up at places Evelyn and the boys frequented. He helped Mr. Tom organize books at the bookstore, chatted with Mrs. Henderson about chrysanthemums, and even attended a preschool parent meeting as just a friend of Ms. Moore. The townspeople were curious about the stranger from the city, but they began warming to him. He didn't flaunt his wealth or name. He lived simply, earnestly. One afternoon, Julian brought a Lego set to the park, where he and the boys built a castle together. Liam stacked blocks with enthusiasm, while Lucas carefully arranged the colors. "Mr. Julian, are you going to stay here forever?" Liam asked, voice sweet and innocent. Julian glanced over at Evelyn, who sat on a bench nearby, and answered, "I hope so, Liam." She heard him but said nothing. She couldn't deny the boys were growing fond of him, and she couldn't ignore that he was trying, really trying. But every time she looked at him, memories of cold lawyers, veiled threats, and the agony of 5 years alone resurfaced. Was she protecting them, or robbing them of the chance to have a father? As the sun dipped below the horizon, Julian stood and brushed the grass from his pants. "Thank you, Evelyn," he said, voice low but sincere, "for giving me this chance." She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Don't make me regret it, Julian." He offered a faint, bittersweet smile before turning to leave. Evelyn watched him go, her heart heavy with things she couldn't say. What she didn't know was that within days a storm from the past would arrive, one powerful enough to shatter this fragile peace they were just beginning to build. Are you still following the story? Please leave your thoughts on the story in the comments below. All your comments are the motivation for us to create better stories. Don't forget to subscribe to Soul Stories. Thank you very much. Brook Hollow awoke to a frigid winter morning, the condensation on Evelyn Moore's sewing shop windows streaking like faded tears. She stood behind the counter, stitching a scarf for Mrs. Henderson, though her mind was far from the rhythmic movement of needle and thread. For the past 2 weeks, Julian had become a regular presence in Liam and Lucas's lives, even if only as Mr. Julian. He played soccer with them, built Lego castles, and even fumbled through baking cookies under Liam's amused instruction. Evelyn watched from a distance, her heart torn between lingering fears and an unspoken warmth she wasn't ready to name. That fragile peace shattered at midday. Mrs. Henderson rushed into the shop, her usual sunny expression replaced with worry. "Evelyn, have you seen the news?" she asked, holding out her phone. The screen displayed a sensational headline from Starscope. "Billionaire Julian Ashford abandoned his sons for 5 years?" Below it, a photo taken from a distance. Julian playing soccer in the park with Liam and Lucas, all three laughing, blissfully unaware of the lurking paparazzi. Evelyn felt the blood drain from her face. She scrolled through the article, each word slicing deeper. Sources confirm that Julian Ashford, heir to the Ashford media empire, has twin sons with a single mother in Vermont. The woman, a former stylist he once publicly humiliated on national television, has been raising the boys in secret for 5 years. The article even quoted Julian's infamous line, "I don't make a habit of dating people backstage, especially the type who climb ladders." "How did they even find out?" Evelyn whispered, her hand trembling. She looked at Mrs. Henderson, trying to stay composed. "Thank you for telling me. I need to make a call." Mrs. Henderson nodded, gently squeezed Evelyn's shoulder and left. Evelyn locked the shop, sat down, and checked X on her phone. The hashtag # Julian Ashford was trending at number 3, flooded with thousands of posts. Some bashed Julian, another rich man shirking responsibility. Others attacked Evelyn. She hid the kids for 5 years. Now she wants a payout? She shut the phone off, tears blurring her vision. Liam and Lucas can't see this. They can't get hurt the way I once was. At his rented house on the edge of town, Julian was also reeling. His phone had been ringing nonstop. Assistants, lawyers, and his mother, Victoria Ashford. He opened his laptop and stared at the Starscope article, fury boiling in his chest. Someone had followed him, snapped photos of his most cherished moment, and turned it into a tabloid scandal. He called Ashford Media's PR team, demanding a full investigation into the leak. But he knew how this worked. Once the tabloids smelled blood, they didn't stop. A knock at the door. Julian opened it and froze. Evelyn stood there, her eyes swollen from crying, but burning with fury. "How could you let this happen, Julian?" she asked, her voice shaking. "You said you wanted to protect them. And now the whole world knows about our sons. They're calling me a gold digger, and my boys." She choked on the words. "Evelyn, I'm sorry," Julian said, stepping toward her, but she held up her hand to stop him. "You didn't know?" she scoffed. "Like you didn't know 5 years ago when you threw me under the bus? I built a safe life for Liam and Lucas, and now you've dragged your cruel world into ours." Before he could reply, his phone rang. He glanced down. "Mom." He hesitated, but Evelyn's voice was cold. "Answer it. I want to hear what she has to say." He put the call on speaker. Victoria Ashford's voice cut like glass through the room. "Julian, what the hell are you doing in that backwater town? The company stock dropped 10% this morning because of that article. That woman, Evelyn Moore, she clearly trapped you. Come back to Manhattan. We'll sue her for defamation." Evelyn clenched her fists, but before she could speak, Julian snapped. "Enough, Mother." His voice was hard. "Evelyn didn't trap me. Liam and Lucas are my sons, and I won't let anyone, including you, hurt them. I'll handle this, but not your way." He hung up and looked at Evelyn. "She won't interfere again. I promise you." Evelyn's eyes wavered. A part of her wanted to believe him, but a louder part just wanted to run. "I need time, Julian," she said, her voice small. "I don't want my children caught in the crossfire between you and your family. I'm thinking of leaving Brook Hollow." Julian was stunned. "Leave? Evelyn, you can't. The boys need you. And me. I know I messed up, but I'm trying to fix it. Don't take them away from me again." She shook her head, tears sliding down her cheeks. "This isn't about you, Julian. It's about them. I've seen what your world does to people. It nearly broke me. I won't let it break them." She turned and walked out, leaving Julian in the silence of his rental home. He clenched his fists, helplessness rising in his chest. He couldn't force her to stay, but he couldn't lose them. Not again. He grabbed his phone and called his PR director. "Set up a press conference," he said, his voice unshakable. "I'm going to tell the truth. It's time I take responsibility." That night, Evelyn sat in the living room, Liam and Lucas fast asleep on the couch, each holding a stuffed animal. She stared at them, heart aching. 5 years ago, she'd left Manhattan to protect them, and now she was ready to do it again. But as she brushed a strand of hair from Lucas's forehead, he mumbled in his sleep, "Mr. Julian tells good stories." Evelyn froze. A tear slipped down her cheek. Whether she admitted it or not, Julian had become part of their lives. She opened her laptop, reread the Starscope article, and scrolled through the comments on X. Amid the criticism, there were voices of support. She raised 2 boys on her own. That's strength. If Julian really abandoned them, he should apologize. She closed the laptop and buried her face in her hands. Should I give him a chance, she wondered. I don't know. But she knew one thing. If she left now, she'd be shattering the only world Liam and Lucas had ever known. Again. She stood, gazing out the window as snow began to fall over Brook Hollow, painting the quiet town white. She whispered more to herself than anyone else. Just one more chance, Julian. Don't make me regret it. Chapter 8. A Public Apology. Manhattan shimmered beneath neon lights, but inside the press room at Ashford Media Tower, the air was heavy, thick with anticipation, like the moment before a storm. Dozens of reporters crammed into the space, camera flashes blinking in rapid succession. Hushed murmurs building as Julian Ashford stepped onto the stage. Gone was the tailored suit and polished air. Instead, he wore a simple navy sweater. His amber eyes scanned the crowd without flinching, though his heart pounded like it was trying to break free from his chest. It had been 3 days since Starscope's article rocked Brook Hollow. Julian had worked tirelessly with his PR team to prepare for this moment. He knew this wasn't just a press conference. It was a chance to correct a massive wrong, to protect Liam, Lucas, and Evelyn from the lies and cruelty of the media. But more than anything, this was the apology he owed her, 5 years overdue. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice low but steady, I'm here today to address the recent allegations concerning myself and 2 young boys in Brook Hollow, Vermont. He paused, inhaling deeply. Liam and Lucas are my sons, and Evelyn Moore, their mother, is a woman I hurt deeply 5 years ago. The room stirred, reporters whispering, pens flying, recorders lifted. Julian raised a hand to quiet them. 5 years ago on national television, I denied my relationship with Evelyn and called her a social climber. That was a lie, a cowardly, calculated lie, born from family pressure and fear of public image. The truth is, I loved her. She was the only person who ever saw me for who I really am. Not for my name, my money, or my legacy. And I betrayed her trust. Because of that, I lost 4 years of being a father. His gaze turned to the nearest camera, as though he were speaking directly to Evelyn through the lens. Evelyn, if you're watching, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't protect you. I'm sorry I let my family drive you away. I didn't know you were pregnant, but that's not an excuse. I should have searched harder. I should have fought for you. I was wrong, and I will spend the rest of my life making it right. The room fell silent. Only the hum of cameras remained. A reporter raised a hand. Mr. Ashford, why now? Is this just damage control after the backlash? Julian shook his head. I'm speaking now because my sons deserve a father who takes responsibility, and Evelyn deserves respect, not to be smeared by gossip and lies. He ended with a promise. I'll do everything I can to protect my family, even if that means stepping away from Ashford Media. Thank you. Without taking further questions, he stepped down from the podium and walked out, leaving behind a media frenzy and a tidal wave of reactions on social media. Back in Brook Hollow, Evelyn sat on the couch in her small living room, eyes locked on the flickering image of Julian on her old TV. Liam and Lucas played with wooden blocks in the corner, unaware that their world had just shifted. When Julian said, I loved her, Evelyn's chest tightened. She hugged a pillow to her chest, trying to hold back tears. His apology was heartfelt, raw, and real, but it also unearthed the pain she had buried so deeply. He says he loves me, but why did it take 5 years to say it? A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Mrs. Henderson walked in with a box of cookies and a soft smile. I saw the press conference, she said gently. That man, he truly regrets it. Are you going to forgive him? Evelyn shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know, Mrs. Henderson. I want to believe him, but I'm scared. What if I open my heart again and everything falls apart all over? Mrs. Henderson squeezed her hand. You're stronger than you think, Evelyn. And those boys? They deserve both a mother and a father. Maybe not today, but someday. She left, leaving Evelyn alone with her tangled thoughts. She glanced over at Liam, who shouted in frustration when his tower toppled, and Lucas, who quietly rebuilt it with calm determination. She remembered Lucas whispering in his sleep, "Mr. Julian tells good stories." They liked him, and no matter how hard she tried to deny it, Julian had brought joy into their lives. She opened her phone, scrolling through the trending topic number, Julian Ashford. The narrative had shifted. People were praising his honesty. It takes courage to admit failure on that level. Evelyn Moore is a hero, raising 2 boys on her own. She deserves better. But the cruel voices remained. Just a billionaire PR stunt. Evelyn closed the app. She didn't want more opinions. She needed clarity. That afternoon, Julian returned to Brook Hollow. He didn't call ahead. But when Evelyn opened the door to her sewing shop and saw him standing there, she wasn't surprised. He looked exhausted, but there was a steady light in his eyes. Something different, something stronger. "I kept my promise," he said softly. "Now I'm here to listen." "What do you want, Evelyn?" "I'll do whatever it takes to make you and the boys feel safe." Evelyn stared at him, her heart in turmoil. She wanted to push him away, to keep things simple and safe, but his words from the press conference echoed in her mind. "I need time, Julian," she said, her voice trembling. "Not because I don't believe you, but because I need to be sure, for Liam and Lucas." Julian nodded, a sad smile tugging at his lips. "I'll wait, as long as it takes." He turned to leave but paused at the door. "I'll be at the park this evening. If you and the boys want to play, no pressure." Evelyn closed the door behind him and leaned against the wall. She didn't know if she could ever fully forgive him, but for the first time in 5 years, a sliver of hope stirred inside her. She looked out the window, watching soft snowflakes fall over Brook Hollow. Just one small step, she thought, for the boys. At the park, Liam and Lucas ran to Julian the moment they spotted him, blissfully unaware of scandals and past betrayals. "Mr. Julian, let's play soccer," Liam shouted, pulling him toward the field. Lucas, quieter, approached with a drawing of a sparrow. "For you," he said shyly, cheeks pink from the cold. Julian knelt down, taking the picture gently, his heart swelling. "Thank you, Lucas. I'll keep it forever." He looked up and saw Evelyn across the field, her expression softer than before. No promises, no guarantees, but maybe, just maybe, he was finally on the right path. Brook Hollow shimmered in the silver light of winter, tiny snowflakes clinging to the bare branches. Inside a small apartment above the bakery, Evelyn Moore watched Liam and Lucas playing with wooden blocks on the rug. It had been 2 weeks since Julian's public apology, and while the town had quietly returned to normal, Evelyn's heart was far from settled. Julian's televised confession, the sincerity in his eyes when he played with their sons, and the way the townspeople now referred to him as a good man, it was all becoming harder to deny. Julian was changing, and more importantly, her sons needed him. Today was the preschool's annual appreciation picnic, a joyful event celebrating the parents' help during the recent fundraiser. Evelyn had agreed to let Julian attend, as Mr. Julian. But as she wrapped Lucas's scarf, he looked up and asked, "Mommy, why does Mr. Julian come to play with us so much? Is he—" He paused, his amber eyes gleaming with curiosity. Nearby, Liam skipped over, chiming in, "Is he our dad?" "My friend said dads play soccer with you." Evelyn froze, her hands trembling just slightly. She had postponed this moment for so long, afraid the truth would shake their tiny world. But now, looking into Liam's bright eyes and Lucas's thoughtful gaze, she knew she couldn't hide it forever. She knelt down and pulled them both into her arms. "My loves," she said gently but firmly, "there's something I need to tell you. Mr. Julian is your dad." Liam gasped, then broke into a beaming grin. "Really? Dad tells great stories." Lucas, quieter, clutched her hand, his voice softer. "Why hasn't he been with us, Mommy?" The question pierced her, but she smiled through it, brushing his hair back. "Because Daddy and I had a big misunderstanding, but he loves you very much, and now he wants to be here. Would you give him a chance? Liam nodded so hard his curls bounced. Lucas paused, thinking, then whispered, I want to. Evelyn hugged them tight, silent tears slipping down her cheeks. This choice hadn't been easy, but she couldn't let her own pain steal the chance for her boys to know their father. Brook Hollow Park bustled with laughter, the scent of grilled hot dogs floating on the crisp air. Families spread picnic blankets on the grass, kids ran around with balloons, and a local folk band played cheerful tunes. Julian arrived early with a basket of sandwiches and apple juice, dressed in a sweater and jeans. No trace of Manhattan's billionaire. He spotted Evelyn and the boys arriving and waved, his heart thudding. He didn't know that today would change everything. Liam! Lucas! Come here! He called, holding up a soccer ball. Liam dashed toward him. Mr. Julian, kick the ball. Hard. But then he paused, glanced at Evelyn, and turned back with a dazzling smile. Dad, Julian, play soccer with me. Lucas approached quietly, taking Julian's hand. Dad, will you tell us a story tonight? Julian froze, eyes wide. That word, Dad, fell from their mouths like a miracle. Sweet, shattering. He dropped to his knees and pulled both boys into his arms, his voice breaking as tears welled. Yes, he whispered. Yes, I'll tell stories. I'll play soccer. I'll do everything with you. Liam giggled and hugged his neck. Lucas rested his head on Julian's shoulder, a rare smile blooming on his lips. Evelyn stood a few steps away, hand on her chest, watching it all unfold. She had feared this moment, feared it would reopen wounds she had spent years burying, but seeing Julian hold their children, his tears real, she felt something inside her begin to soften. The past shouldn't punish the boys, she thought. She stepped closer, and when Julian looked up, she gave him a cautious but genuine smile. Thank you, he said hoarsely, wiping his face as the boys ran off to play. Thank you for telling them. She nodded. I did it for Liam and Lucas. They deserve a father. But Julian, I'm still not ready. Not for us. He accepted it, his gaze steady. I understand. I'll wait, Evelyn. As long as it takes. He turned and ran off after the boys, their laughter echoing across the park. Evelyn remained where she was, the weight on her chest finally lifting. She hadn't forgiven him fully, but she'd opened a door. Just enough for a sliver of light to shine through. The picnic continued with music and games. The townspeople, once wary of Julian, now smiled when they saw him. Mrs. Henderson leaned over and whispered, He looks happiest when he's with those kids. You made the right call. Mr. Tom, the bookseller, clapped Julian on the back and chuckled. You're doing great, Dad Julian. Julian flushed, but the smile on his face didn't fade. As the sun dipped lower, Liam tugged Julian toward the small stage where children were invited to give thank you speeches. Grabbing the mic with excitement, Liam shouted, Thank you, Mommy, because you're awesome. And thank you, Dad Julian, for playing soccer with me. The crowd burst into laughter and applause. Lucas stepped up, hesitant, and whispered into the mic, Thank you, Dad, for keeping my sparrow drawing. Julian stood frozen, tears in his eyes once more. He looked out into the crowd and found Evelyn, her eyes glistening, her hands clapping slowly. She smiled, this time without fear. In that moment, Julian knew that while the road ahead might be long, they were finally walking towards something real. That night, Evelyn sat beside her son's bed, reading their usual bedtime story. When she closed the book, Liam yawned and said, Mommy, I like when Daddy's here. He makes the dinosaur funny. Lucas nodded, clutching his stuffed animal. He still has my drawing. I'm glad. Evelyn kissed them both on the forehead, her heart warm. She stepped out onto the balcony, watching the snow fall gently over Brook Hollow. She wasn't ready to open her heart completely, but for the first time in 5 years, she didn't feel alone. Maybe, she thought, just maybe one day, we'll be a family. Brook Hollow glowed under Christmas lights, strings of warm bulbs wrapped around the tall pine tree in the town square. Snow drifted gently from the sky, blanketing wooden rooftops in soft white, while the scent of gingerbread wafted up from the bakery beneath Evelyn Moore's apartment. It had been a year since Julian Ashford walked into her sewing shop, bringing pain, hope, and eventually healing. Now he was an irreplaceable part of Liam and Lucas's lives, and though she had once fought it, hers too. Evelyn stood in the kitchen, rolling out cookie dough with Liam and Lucas. The three of them laughed as Liam ended up with flour all over his face. Julian, now a seasoned cookie cutter after months of practice, stood beside them, teasing Lucas as the boy carefully sprinkled sugar on each shape. "You sure the sparrows like these cookies?" Julian asked with a wink. Lucas nodded solemnly. "Definitely, Daddy. Sparrows like sweet things." The word Daddy still melted Julian's heart, even after hearing it 100 times. He looked at Evelyn, brushing flour off Liam's cheek, and felt a quiet joy settle deep inside him. She hadn't said yes to his proposal yet. "I need time," she had told him, and he respected that. But tonight, under the warmth of Christmas, he hoped that might change. The Brook Hollow Preschool Christmas program was held in the cozy community hall, lit with soft candlelight and anchored by a giant, glittering tree. Children performed songs, parents applauded, and the scent of hot chocolate drifted from the refreshment table. Evelyn sat in the front row, Julian beside her, both watching Liam and Lucas on stage in their toy soldier costumes. When Liam stumbled over a line and Lucas whispered a quiet correction, the crowd chuckled warmly. Evelyn gripped Julian's hand, eyes sparkling. After the play, children were invited on stage to share their Christmas wishes. Liam grabbed the microphone and shouted, "I wish for a real dinosaur." Laughter filled the room. Lucas, a little more reserved, spoke into the mic softly, "I wish our family stays together forever." Evelyn's grip on Julian's hand tightened, tears pooling in her eyes. Lucas had always been the sensitive one. His quiet heart carried more worries than he let on. As the boys returned to their seats, Liam suddenly darted back on stage, clutching the mic with a mischievous grin. "Mommy, I think you should marry Daddy." The crowd erupted, laughter, gasps, and a few playful whistles. Evelyn blushed, covering her mouth in surprise and laughter. Julian stood slowly, his eyes bright. He climbed the stage steps and knelt before her, right as snowflakes began falling outside the open windows. "Evelyn," he said, his voice deep but clear across the hushed room, "I lost you once, because of my pride, my fear, and my mistakes. But you gave me a second chance, and I promise, for the rest of my life, to love and protect you, Liam and Lucas. Will you marry me?" He opened the ring box, a simple silver band with a small sapphire, the color of her eyes. Nothing flashy, just right. Evelyn looked at him, then at their boys, both bouncing with excitement and yelling, "Say yes, Mommy." She laughed through her tears and nodded. "Yes," she whispered. Julian slid the ring onto her finger, stood, and pulled her into his arms. The room burst into applause. Liam and Lucas charged forward, turning the hug into a family embrace, four hearts tangled in love under the twinkling Christmas lights. The next day brought another unexpected gift. Julian received a call from his mother, Victoria Ashford, the first contact since the press conference months ago. "My son," she said, her voice softer than he remembered. "I'd like to meet the boys. I was wrong about Evelyn, about everything." Julian was stunned, but invited her to Brook Hollow. That afternoon, Victoria arrived not in a limousine or with an entourage, but driving a rented sedan alone. She entered Evelyn's apartment with a sharp but softened gaze. Liam and Lucas rushed toward her. "Do you like dinosaurs?" Liam asked, holding up a toy. Lucas shyly offered a drawing. "This is for you." Victoria, the once stern matriarch of Ashford Media, sat down and pulled both boys into a gentle hug. "I love dinosaurs," she said to Liam, then to Lucas, "and this is the most beautiful drawing I've ever seen." She looked up at Evelyn, eyes no longer cold. "Ms. Moore, I owe you an apology. I was wrong to see you as a threat. You're a wonderful mother, and I hope we can start again." Evelyn, cautious but gracious, nodded. "For Liam and Lucas," she said. Julian stood by her side, taking her hand. He felt something heavy lift from his shoulders. Victoria spent the afternoon playing with the boys, telling them stories from her youth. When it was time to leave, she hugged Julian tightly. "You made the right choice," she whispered. "Hold on to them." That night, Christmas Eve blanketed Brook Hollow in pure white. Evelyn and Julian sat by the window watching the snow fall. Liam and Lucas lay asleep on the sofa, each curled around a stuffed animal. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting a warm glow. Evelyn leaned into Julian, her ring catching the light. "You did it," she murmured. "You gave us a family." Julian kissed her forehead. "No, I just tried to keep up. You're the one who made us whole." He pulled her closer, and they sat there in silence, wrapped in warmth and love found after loss. Outside, snow blanketed the quiet town, and inside their small apartment, a not-so-perfect but beautifully complete family of four began their new chapter, ready for whatever came next.